the 6th Annual Lay-Clergy Institute of the First Congregational Church of Longmont, Colorado. Dr. Howard Thurman led the Institute, speaking on the general theme, The Dilemmas of the Human Spirit. This tape is Dr. Thurman's lecture of Sunday evening, April the 1st, entitled The Dilemma of Love and Hate. Dr. Thurman is introduced by Mrs. Mildred Gamble, moderator of First Church.
As moderator of First Congregational Church, United Church of Christ, I too welcome you to the 6th Annual Lay-Clergy Institute. Conceived in 1968 as a means of facilitating man's continual quest for religious experience, the Lay-Clergy Institute was initiated by the controversial late Bishop Pike. For many of us, the highlight of that first institute was the Sunday morning worship service, at which time a very human Bishop Pike led us in spirited song and then challenged us to grow in wisdom and in stature, even as Jesus did. The quest continued in 1969 with Dr. Howard Thurman, illuminating the darkness for us by showing us how to become persons by an other-than-self reference, which is other persons. Popular newspaper columnist Sidney Harris led our quest in 1970. 1971 brought the Dean of Yale's Divinity School, Colin Williams. His Sunday afternoon presentation of Jesus Christ, the Clue to History, caused us to look at the great American dream as a challenge to make of this country a new Israel. Last year, Roman Catholic lay theologian Michael Novak, author of The Unmeltable Ethnics, guided us with perception from the experience of nothingness through the ascent of the mountain to its ultimate flight of the dove. April 1st, 1973, heralds the return of Dr. Howard Thurman to Longmont, Colorado, and the Lay-Clergy Institute with its overall theme, The Dilemmas of the Human Spirit. This morning, we heard Dr. Thurman address himself to the dilemmas of the religious experience. Tonight, he speaks to us on the dilemmas of love and hate. Tomorrow morning at 10, he will meet with the public in open dialogue in Fellowship Hall. Tomorrow night at 8, Dr. Thurman will conclude this year's Institute with his insights on the dilemmas of life and death. Born in 1900 in a two-room house in Daytona Beach, Florida, Howard Thurman, after the death of his father, was reared by a determined mother and an ex-slave grandmother who inspired young Howard to seek an education and to become a scholar. As a religious scholar, Dr. Thurman studied at Morehouse College in Georgia, at Columbia, at Colgate in Rochester, and with Dr. Rufus Jones, the great Quaker. From these studies, he concluded that the spiritual experience of the human race is essentially one single experience. In 1932, Dr. Thurman ended his years as teacher of the philosophy of religion at Morehouse and Spelman colleges in Atlanta. Until 1943, he served as dean of the chapel and professor of theology at Howard University in Washington, D.C. It was during his tenure there that he and his wife, Sue, visited India and met with Gandhi. It was in India that the mind of Howard Thurman made initial contact with an idea, the idea of a church that would cross all lines to remove all barriers. The process of conception, growth, birth, and development of an idea resulted eventually in his move to San Francisco. This city of 48 different ethnic groups provided him with the opportunity to serve for 9 years as pastor of the Church for the Fellowship of All Peoples, the first interfaith, interracial church in the United States. It was while he served here that a Life magazine poll selected him as one of America's 10 greatest preachers. From San Francisco, Dr. Thurman went to Boston University to create an interracial, interdenominational religious center. He retired from this position in 1965 and since then has served as Dean Emeritus of Marsh Chapel of Boston University. In addition to serving as scholar, teacher, pastor, and lecturer, Howard Thurman has authored numerous books, most of which bear beautiful metaphorical poetic titles. 2 weeks ago, Harper & Row released his latest book, The Track to the Water's Edge. In October, another Thurman book, The Mood of Christmas, will be released. In it will be a literary collage of anecdotes, poems, meditations, written over a lifetime. This week, I read again 2 of Howard Thurman's books, The Creative Encounter and The Luminous Darkness. Permit me to read a portion of the closing paragraph from each. I selected these passages because they will reveal to you the vision that Howard Thurman has lived. I quote, "It is my belief that in the presence of God, there is neither male nor female, white nor black, Gentile nor Jew, Protestant nor Catholic, Hindu, Buddhist, nor Muslim, but a human spirit stripped to the literal substance of itself before God. It is a spirit that makes for wholeness and for community. It knows no country, and its allies are to be found wherever the heart is kind, and the collective will and the private endeavor seek to make justice where injustice abounds, to make peace where chaos is rampant, and to make the voice heard on behalf of the helpless and the weak. It is the voice of God and the voice of man. It is the meaning of all the strivings of the whole human race toward a world of friendly men underneath a friendly sky. Join with me, please, in greeting a friendly man underneath a friendly sky, Dr. Howard Thurman.
Let the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable in thy sight, O Lord, my rock and my Redeemer. Amen. I dreamt God took my soul to hell. Hell was a fair place. The water of the lake was blue. And I said to God, I like this place. And God said, do you? Birds sang, turf came to the water edge, and trees grew from it. Away off among the trees, I saw beautiful women walking. Their clothes were of many delicate colors and clung to them, and they were tall and graceful and had yellow hair. Their robes trailed over the grass. They glided in and out among the trees, and over their heads hung yellow fruit like large pears of melted gold. And I said to God, it is very fair. I would go up and taste. And God said, wait. And after a while, I noticed a very fair woman pass. She looked this way and that and drew down a branch. And it seemed that she kissed the fruit upon it softly and went on her way. And her dress made no rustle as she passed over the grass. And when I saw her no more, from among the stems came another woman, fair as she had been, in a delicate tinted robe. She looked this way and that. When she saw no one there, she drew down the fruit, and when she had looked it over, she found a place. She put her mouth to it softly and went away. And I saw other women come, making no noise, and they glided away also over the grass. And I said to God, what are they doing? And God said, they are poisoning. And I said, how? And God said, they touch the fruit with their lips. When they have made a tiny wound in it with their 4 teeth, they set in it that which is under their tongues. They close it with their lip, that no man may see the place and pass on. And I said to God, why do they do that? And God said that another may not eat. And I said to God, but if they poison all the fruit, none dare eat, what do they gain? And God said, nothing. I said, are they not afraid that they themselves may bite where another has bitten? And God said, yes, they are afraid. In hell, all men fear. And then he called me further, and the water of the lake seemed less blue now. And to the right among the trees were men working, and I said to God, I should like to go and work with these men. Hell must be a very fruitful place because the grass is so green. And God said, nothing grows in the garden they are making. We stood looking, and I saw them working among the bushes, digging holes. But in the holes they set nothing. And when they had covered them with sticks and earth, each went away off and sat behind the bushes, watching. And I noticed that as each man walked, he set his foot down carefully, looking where he trod. And I said to God, what are they doing? And God said, they're making pitfalls into which their fellows may sink. And I said to God, why do they do that? And God said, because each man thinks that when his brother falls, he will rise. And I said to God, how will he rise? And God said, he will not rise. And I saw their eyes gleam from behind the bushes. And I said to God, are these men sane? And God said, no, they're not sane. There's no sane man in hell. The dilemma of love and hate. I began my thinking with you this evening with the commonplace, but to me very important insight that man's feeling for love, man's insight concerning love comes out of the original religious experience of the race. And one of the tragedies of our time is that we have separated, in Western culture, we have separated the love ethic from the religious insight. And why do I say that it arises out of man's inner sense of the religious experience, a part of the memory of the race in its experience with its creator? Because in the religious experience, a man discovers what it is that ultimately he amounts to. It is here in the primary exposure to his God, as was quoted in the passage. He is peeled of all of the superficial things, all of the cumulative baggage of his life, all of his little identities, all of his primary and secondary defense mechanisms, all of the things by which he lays claim to his significance in a manner external to himself. All of these things are stripped away. And the man finds that at last he can be in touch with his own reality. And it is here that he discovers for the first time a sense of self. And there can be no relatedness to other people, no meaningful, structural relationship between one man and another, if there is no sense of self. Now that is the background for my thinking. Now I begin to work for a little while. If I were to ask you tonight, above all other things in the world, what do you want most profoundly, most intimately, most surely, most securely? I don't know what you would say, but my guess is whatever you said, what you would mean is what I'm going to say. You would say, I want to be understood. I want the experience of ridding myself, even for one swirling moment, of all of my defenses, so that I can just be me, without prelude, without postlude, without any of the things to which I refer when I want to give to myself meaning. I just want to be me, completely exposed and absolutely secure. This is what we want, and this is love. One day I came into our living room in the early days in San Francisco when our younger daughter was about 11. And the smell of San Francisco was all over me. And she said something, I don't remember what she said, but I answered her in good, drop something. I answered her in good fatherly fashion. And for the first time in the years that I'd known her, the long 11 years, she said, with quiet rage, the kind of rage that only an 11-year-old girl can have. "Daddy," she said, "when are you going to stop treating me like a daughter? There is no such thing as a daughter. I'm Anne. I'm 11 years old, so and so and so and so." She spelled out her credentials. And until that time, I thought I was at least the second most significant father in the world. But it had never occurred to me that I was dealing with her as an abstraction. And what she wanted of me, what she needed desperately of me, was to have me deal with her as a concretion. Somehow, if I could bypass all of the external things between us and touch her at her reality, and in so doing, she would become aware of her own reality. And this is to love. And the working definition is very simple. To love is to deal with another person at a point in that person that is beyond all his faults and all his virtues. To touch another human being at that point in him or her that is beyond all the faults, all the virtues, and to look out upon life from the other side, to see it through the eyes of the other, even as you remain yourself. And this is a particular gift that little children have. They move directly. I was over visiting with your assistant associate minister, and little Twinkie, anyway, when I walked in, she moved straight to my center, bypassed my size, my age, whatever learning I had, my friendship with her father and mother, but she went straight to a center in me that had nothing to do with any of these things. And my response was what? My response was to move straight to that center in her. And I found that even though I had forgotten how to listen to that form of English that she spoke, I understood from the other side. This is love. And everybody needs it. Because life, you see, lives on life. Life lives by eating life. And I think this is the gross, in the sense of unrefined, basis for the doctrine in religion of eternal life. This is where it is rooted. Life never dies because life eats itself. Life consumes its own vitality. And love is the vehicle by which we nourish each other on each other. Now, hate is a denial of this. But I think that we have been rather superficial in dealing with the dynamics of hate in our society, and I'd like to talk about it for a few minutes. Well, then, personal primary relationships and collective relationships. For again and again, in the story of man on this planet, when he is face to face with overwhelming, overpowering forces with reference to which he is unable to make any sort of creative adjustment, when at last his life is at stake, one of the roles, and think carefully with me please tonight, one of the roles of hatred is to provide a solid place on which to stand and affirm one's sense of persona, sense of self, in the presence of forces with which one cannot deal and with which one cannot relate. Hate, in this sense, then becomes a defense mechanism. It is the last thing, the last private inner rallying of the personality, when it cannot be nourished or touched by anything external to itself. And here, when the hate crystallizes, it affirms the significance of the ego. It reinforces the self by dealing externally with forces with which it cannot cope. And there can be no dealing with hate, either from the point of view of ethics or morality or religion, if the positive, though destructive aspect of hate is not understood. It is destructive because it isolates the individual from other individuals. It builds a wall. And it denies the reality, it denies the existence of the other person. And there's something about the human spirit that cannot stand isolation. It cannot stand being cut off, being separated from its food. And what is its food? Other human beings. So anything that separates one human being from another, even though it may be a defense which the individual uses in an effort to save his own life, becomes finally that which makes him wither and die. And if we do not understand this, then we deal with hate as something that has no dynamic, no positive dimension. It is positive and destructive, while love is positive and creative. And it's an important distinction. Now, with this part of the discussion, I want to move to the aspects of the dilemma. The dilemma of love is this. When I love, I give up the initiative over my own life. I trust. And there is something in the human spirit that resists giving up the initiative over your own life, even to God. And this is the central problem in all commitment, all religious commitment. For it is required that we give to God in the religious commitment the nerve center of our consent, that we give up the initiative over our own lives so that we do as God wills us to do. We let ourselves down in the permissiveness and the grace and the love and the tenderness and the compassion of God. But we give up the initiative over our own lives, and this is what we cannot quite stand, because when you give up the initiative over your own life, there's always the possibility that the person to whom you give up your initiative will demand of you something that you have no intention of doing. Because you aren't sure, you see, that they are dealing with your life from the other side, where you are. They're dealing with your life on the side where they are, and perhaps they have not learned how to go down this way and come up inside of you. We all tend to try to get to the inside of the other person by going this way, and you can't do it. You go down and come up inside. So that when I love, I want the initiative. And I am never sure that I have enough wisdom, tenderness, compassion, grace to deal with that initiative responsibly. But I want to give up the initiative. This is a part of the hunger of my heart. I want to yield. I want the sense of worth and validity that comes when my trust is so overwhelming that I trust the loved one to do with my life what I do not have enough insight to do with my own life. And always, this is what I'm trying to find. It is for this reason that when I love, I will do gladly for the beloved what no power in heaven or hell or on the earth could make me do if I did not love. And it is for this reason that when men begin to think seriously about the Creator, about God, they think of him in terms of love. And as Olive Schreiner suggests, their devils have been haters. Now, the next step in our process is that it takes a discipline to love. Discipline. For, you see, how can I say it? The person has to move within the scope of what I call my magnetic field. As long as they're outside of my magnetic field, they don't count. That's why, for instance, when nations go to war, particularly nations that are part of the Christian tradition, when nations go to war, what is the first and most important and critical decision or act or action that the nation has to take? Redefine the enemy so that the enemy is no longer a member of the human race. And as soon as he is out of bounds, then it's open season. I can do anything to him without attacking my own deep sense of inner values, because he is not in my magnetic field. And the dilemma is, again, that as a result of my experience, I have a sense, a feel, as the Apostle Paul puts it, that woos all men to come within my magnetic field. But I don't want this. I know that it is important for me to have people outside of my magnetic field so I can do various things and keep my self-respect. Yeah. It's like the Aztecs several hundred years ago in central Mexico and Central America. Their religion rested on whether or not they are able, on the high holy day, to sacrifice a male that had been taken in battle. People sacrificed and dropped down the long steps to his death. They woke up to discover they had conquered everybody. And this was a threat to the religion. Because if there's no enemy to fight, they can't get a male taken in battle to sacrifice. So they unconquered some people and then would wage war with them once a year and get a male to sacrifice. We struggle to keep the magnetic field secure, agreeable, acceptable, when at the center of our own experience of love, there's always the pressure to push the magnetic field wider and wider and wider and wider. And it is this insistence that is generic in the love experience that demands that I widen the area. And at the same time, it is my own sense of wanting to keep my own autonomy over my own life and the lives of those in my magnetic field that causes me to resist, to oppose, to revise my values. And we see this most dramatically. The Christian sees this most dramatically in times of war, again, I refer to. When I must give over the initiative of my life to the state. And this is very crucial. And one does not have to be a flag waver or anything of that sort. I'm dealing with the very ground of the significance of the private person. I can give up the initiative over my own life when I offer it in love. Well, there is this response or no response. But it's very difficult for me to give it up to the state. The poet of the desert describes the dilemma in a very interesting way. He's talking about the Civil War, and he says, my father prayed when he drew a bead on the gray coat back in those blazing years when the house was divided. Bless his old heart, there never was truer or kinder, yet my father prayed while hoping that the ball from his clumsy old musket might thud to the body of some hot-eyed young Southerner and tumble him limp in the mud of the Vicksburg trenches. That was my father, praying and shooting wholeheartedly, never a doubt. But what about me in my day of battle? Could I put my prayers behind a slim Springfield bullet? Hardly, except to mutter, Jesus, you and I part company here. My country calls for my body and takes my soul also. Do you see those humans herded and driven against me? Turn away, Jesus, for I must kill them. Why? Such evils bring some vast, vague good to my country. I do not know, but today my business is killing, and my gods must be luck and the devil till this thing is over. Turn away, Jesus. Your eyes make me slack in my duty. My father could mix his prayers with his shooting, and he was a great, good man in his generation. But if I should pray like him, I'd spoil it by laughing. What is the matter? This is the dilemma, always. And now, almost finally, but not quite finally, there is a discipline. And the first aspect of the discipline is to widen the area of your magnetic field, the field of caring, where, with reference to which you feel responsible to touch the people in this area at a point in themselves beyond all of their faults and all of their virtues. That's the first discipline. And the second is it requires a kind of imagination. How to say it?